If it happens, I will be the happiest guy on the planet. Not only because I called it for over a year, saying things that most people would think are absurd, all of a sudden are gaining traction. And I'll tell you one thing that's really given me positivity that maybe it just will happen. I believe it. And I think it's less about my gold holdings or my gold company and more about my kids and someday my grandkids in a future. And no one wants our treasuries. How do you get them to buy our treasuries? How do you get them to continue to buy into a system built on trust ever since 1971 when we closed the gold link, built on trust where no one trusts us anymore? And that's a problem. And this has been my thesis. Now, if indeed we see gold back the treasury, a 50-year treasury to start, in her book, she says 5, 10, 20, 30, and 50, but 50 to start, redeemable in gold with zero coupon. Maybe the 50 has a very small coupon, yield, interest rate. If that happens, I think this country has a future. I mean that sincerely.
I think everybody that's on this listening right now has the opportunity to surf these massive waves of wealth that are coming with gold and silver. And I don't know if everybody sees what I see or what you see, Andy, but I think we got a taste of it in December and January. And to me, that was just a taste of it, right? We're just barely starting to go off. If you look at all of the charts, it basically shows that we're still in the early stages. We've got anywhere from 5 to 15 years of a bull run here that can happen. There's a few things that make a determination on how long that is and exactly how high it goes. But no one's looking about a few percent increase. We're looking at multiplications. So gold multiplying multiple times, silver multiplying even more than that. And so that's where I use the term of silver tsunami, the surfboard. It's about riding these massive waves. And one of the things to understand with waves is they come in patterns. They come in sets, right? And then you'll have a swell. So a swell could be coming in for like 3 or 4 days. You could have a bunch of a big hurricane that's going out, pushing out a bunch of waves. And then the sets come in like every half an hour to hour. In Southern California, a lot of times you'll get them every 5 or 10 minutes if there's a big swell that's coming in. And so that was our first big swell that came in, was December and January. I'm hearing the 4th of July, there's a lot of hope around that. So I wanted to see if you could share with us a little bit as people start to put questions in the chat for us. What's your hope for the 4th of July? What do you think could potentially happen? And could we see a silver tsunami or another silver tsunami happen this year?
I've been talking about this for over a year, ever since I had Judy Shelton on my podcast, and Michelle, my co-host, Michelle McCory, had her on as well. And she said to me on my podcast, Andy, in no uncertain terms, when I was part of Trump's transition team as his nominee to run the Fed in 2016, that 2026 would be the biggest day of his presidency, that it would be the 250th anniversary of the country, that he would indeed peg gold to the back of a 50-year treasury. Now, she's written a book on that called Good as Gold. She's all over Twitter, X. I think that's where it all stems from. And I've been using her statement to that effect as part of my thesis on how Trump brings back manufacturing. Because let's just call it what it is. We're dead in the water if we don't. We're broke. We're $200 trillion in debt. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, government, military pensions are $100 trillion in of themselves, plus $150 trillion in and of themselves. We are uneducated. Ray Dalio recently said 60% of the country has a literacy rate under the 6th grade. Triffin's dilemma, part of my thesis, says, well, as a reserve currency, you'll always run a trade imbalance. You'll hollow out your manufacturing being the reserve currency, and sure enough, we have. The thesis is that the world needs more dollars than we can provide alone as the reserve currency. We'll use Cambodia as an example. We don't trade much with Cambodia, but they need dollars to buy oil and transact global commerce. So they sell their currency in the open market to buy ours. And the continual selling and buying over time creates a big chasm, if you will, between the Cambodian currency and the dollar. And so what happens is over time, someone says, we could send our t-shirt factory to Cambodia and make 5 times what we're making. Let's do it. That's how Triffin's dilemma hollows out your manufacturing. And so between the fact that we're broke, borderline insolvent. If you were to add the unfunded liabilities, we're well north of 300% debt to GDP. There's never been a country in history that's crossed that line that hasn't either defaulted or hyperinflated. It's the line of no return, really. We don't make anything. We're uneducated, and here comes AI just in time to not rescue the situation, but to make it more challenging. So one way or the other, we have to bring back manufacturing. My thesis is centered around what Judy said in conjunction with the Genius Act that goes into effect in January and how this will play out. Let me put it to you this way. If it happens, I will be the happiest guy on the planet. Not only because I called it for over a year, saying things that most people would think are absurd, all of a sudden are gaining traction. And I'll tell you one thing that's really given me positivity that maybe it just will happen. But I believe it. And I think it's less about my gold holdings or my gold company and more about my kids and someday my grandkids in a future where if we don't make things, if we're reliant on the rest of the world for everything, from aspirin to penicillin to aircraft parts to everything, and we don't make anything, and we can't sell it to the world because of Triffin's dilemma, our currency is too strong relative to others, and we're uneducated, and AI is going to make the rich richer through massive efficiency at the expense of millions of jobs, we're in trouble. Our kids are in trouble, big trouble. And no one wants our treasuries. How do you get them to buy our treasuries? How do you get them to continue to buy into a system built on trust ever since 1971 when we closed the gold link, built on trust where no one trusts us anymore. And that's a problem. And this has been my thesis. Now, if indeed we see gold back the treasury, a 50-year treasury to start. In her book, she says 5, 10, 20, 30, and 50, but 50 to start. Redeemable in gold with zero coupon. Maybe the 50 has a very small coupon, yield, interest rate. If that happens, I think this country has a future. I mean that sincerely. My mentor, Richard Russell, used to say the Fed has two choices. They can inflate or they can die, meaning inflate or default. There's three ways to pay off debt. You can inflate it, you can default on it, or you can produce more than you consume. We are consumers, right? We don't produce. We sold off all our manufacturing. We consume more than we produce. That's a big problem in a country that is losing its competitive edge in education and in terms of indebtedness. So without rehashing what my thesis is, a very big part, I mean, the two central themes are the Genius Act and what that does, and Judy Shelton's idea of backing the Treasury. Now, one of the things that just happened, I woke up and said, are you kidding me? This is absolutely insane, because a lot of the things that I've talked about to get to that point seem to be happening. The deliveries, the massive deliveries on COMEX. You realize that in the first 10 days of the month, we've already seen almost $13 billion delivered to COMEX. Now, who the hell's doing that? Yes, it hasn't left. About 1 million ounces have left COMEX, about 4.5 billion in the last 30 days. But that 12 to 13 billion that's been delivered, so not all of it's left COMEX. So what? These people who always cash settled, always, less than 1% of contracts stood for delivery my whole career, 36 years. And all of a sudden, wicked amounts every month, billions and billions and billions, and no one's talking about it but me. Some people in the industry are, but no one in the mainstream. And these people are prioritizing numbered bars in their account rather than paper promises. Who in God's green earth stood for possession for almost $13 billion worth of gold? And the mainstream idiot media doesn't say a word about it, but that's 19 straight months of this shit. Every single month, billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and billions being delivered, and not a word by the mainstream. They're missing everything. The rest means squat. It means squadouche. The price gets hammered. China imports more in the first quarter of this year in silver than at any time in the history of the country as a second largest producer of silver in the world. In February, after silver got kneecapped, right? The first 2 months of the year, January and February, the largest ever 2-month deliveries on COMEX, ever. January, February. And someone stands for or in February it was only 25 million ounces delivered. It was a big January. But 39 million ounces left the warehouse in February as the price got kicked in the balls. Pardon my French, right? Down on the ground crying is the price. And someone stands for delivery for 25 million ounces at the time, 26 million, about 1.4 billion or whatever it was. But then 39 million ounces, 2.9 million pounds leaves COMEX and an armada of semi-trucks. Where the hell did it go? 4 billion in silver. Where did it go? Why does no one talk about that? Why is that not more important than the Fugazi price that is a tool of misdirection? Price misdirects you. Deliveries betray the price.